Hi, everyone, and welcome to Living a Legacy. And I'm excited to welcome to the program Eric Couch. Eric, how are you? And I know you're excited.
Neil, I am really excited. And we are freezing here in Dallas. It's been snowing more than it has, I think, in history. But we're gonna heat it up with our conversation because today we have we have a true celebrity. He has been on 500 stages nationwide. He's been on the Tonight Show over 60 times. He's been on the Late Show with David Letterman, even co-hosted when David was out, and he is shaking hands. Well, we'll get there. Today we have none other than Tom Dreesen. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Neil. As I told Neil, I've done a lot of shows in Pittsburgh, but I've also done a lot of shows in Dallas.
All right.
You guys you're not sure if you're in Dallas or in Chicago today. Is that true?
Right now, I can look out my window. It's
Exactly.
It's cold, buddy.
I can't believe what Texas has gone through this week. Unbelievable.
Yeah. The snow's not that bad. It's only, it's 3 to 6 inches outside. It's just the infrastructure is just not built for it. So a lot of people have lost power. Grocery stores are empty. Gas stations are sold out, but there's no electricity for heating. So that's the issue is, propane sold out, firewood sold out, and people are without electricity and water. So that's the issue. Not so much, we can get with cold, but being in a big city. So, we're just trying to support our neighbor. I went to the grocery store earlier and just bought groceries and texted all the neighbors on the street and said, "Hey, I'm at the store. What do you need?" And several said, "Hey, bring me milk, bring me bread." And, we just support each other, right? That's what we're called to do. So, Tom, let's hear about you. You've got some amazing stories. Your life being the main one.
Well, I'm very fortunate. That's what I want to talk to you guys about today. I have a book I'll call Still Standing, My Journey from Streets and Saloons to the Stage and Sinatra. And that's basically, Still Standing is a double entendre because obviously I've been a stand-up comedian for 51 years now. This is my 51st year in show business. And I'm still standing, and I've been knocked down a lot in my life. And if you read the book, I was knocked down physically, and I kept getting up. And in show business, rejections are enormous. So, but no matter what happened in my life, I would pick, as Frank Sinatra would sing in that song, "That's Life." I picked myself up and got back in the, So that's what
right.
It's all about. It's basically, if you can sum it up in a sentence or two, I had 8 brothers and sisters. We lived in a shack on the south side of Chicago, a suburb called Harvey, Illinois. And, 8 kids. We lived in a shack. If a window broke, you stuck a rag in it. If you have holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. And I would go shine shoes in all the bars in my neighborhood. Harvey, Illinois was a microcosm of Chicago. It had steel mills and factories and blue collar people that worked hard every day. And the mantra in the neighborhood was, you only deserve in life what you work for. And I was out with my brother when I was 8. I was shining shoes in all the bars in my neighborhood. And all those bars that I shined shoes in, Sinatra was on the jukebox. And so the book is basically about this little boy who's shining shoes to help raise money to feed his brothers and sisters. And he's hearing Frank Sinatra on all these jukeboxes. And one day that little boy is carrying Frank Sinatra's coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. So it's that journey of that little boy and all that happens in between. My years in the service, my coming out of the service, the struggles that I went through, married, 3 kids, and then meeting Tim Reed, becoming America's first black and white comedy team. History shows we were last, we did that for 6 years. Tim later went on to become Venus Flytrap and WKRP Cincinnati. And
yes, he was.
So many other shows, but then we're still the best of friends to this day. In fact, we wrote a book years ago called Tim and Tom, an American Comedy in Black and White. But this is my story. And it's just been so much fun, with this book, because all the years that I toured in show business when I started out, wherever I went, whenever something poignant or something funny happened, I would go back to the room and journal that.
Yeah.
I would write that story down.
Exactly.
Something that I thought was profound or something that moved me or something that made me laugh, And so I collected all these stories, and eventually I had them all in a big binder. And I was going to think about writing a book for my grandchildren, because one day my grandchildren are going to have children, and they're going to say, "What was your grandpa like?" And they say, "Well, here's a book."
Yeah.
And meanwhile, a guy from Dallas, wonderful guy, Darren Grubb, and a guy from New York named Johnny Russo called me and they said, "Hey, we've got to deal with a publisher, and we want to write a book about your life. We think that you've had an interesting journey." And I said, "Guys, I already wrote this thing, but you could sure help me with the narrative and all the other things." And so we put this book and knock on wood, is getting rave reviews,
Yeah.
And
Well,
here, I'll hold it up. There you go. You can't see it because it blurs. And you can get it on it. Okay, that's the last
Zoom, the good old Zoom green screens. You can't hold up the book.
there you go.
Definitely.
There, I'll hold it. I'll hold it up
There
for
you
you. You can see it there.
Awesome.
So there's the cover of the book.
Yes, absolutely. So
Now, Tom,
go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead, Neil.
No, I wanted you to go to the next question, but Tom, I could just see he's so excited, Eric, about the book releasing. It's like, this is something, one of all his major accomplishments, but I'm sure, Eric, you can ask that question, but I could see Tom's excited to talk about this book.
Yeah. So Tom, there's a million questions we would love to ask. And I know we won't have time to get into, even a small portion of them, but I would love to start, right? So you have you spent 14 years with Sinatra as the opening act in that relationship. But even prior to that, you and Sinatra both grew up from very meager earnings, beginnings with growing up on the streets, and then also, being in saloons and performing in saloons. And so you have that camaraderie as well. I would love you to fill us in on kind of some of those beginnings that you share, and then your relationship with Sinatra.
Yeah, well, the way I got the gig with Sinatra, I was a veteran by that time. I had done about 35 Tonight shows. After I did my first appearance on the Tonight Show, I never stopped working from that day on. The Tonight Show was just a turning point. In 1975, wherever you went in America, people say, "What do you do for a living?" You say, "I'm a stand-up comedian." The next question out of their mouth was, "Oh yeah, you ever been on Johnny Carson?" If you haven't been on Johnny Carson in the eyes of America, you just want to, and you might want to be one, you might going to be one, but you weren't one now. And so getting on that show, Freddie Prince's appearance on the Tonight Show, the next day he had a sitcom. So in 1975, when the comedy team split up, all of us migrated, comedians all across the land migrated to the West Coast, called the Comedy Store. It was the only comedy there at the time. Later the Improv came in the Laugh Factory, but at that time it was the only game in town. So you had to get on at the Comedy Store so that you could get the talent coordinators from these other shows to see you. So the pressure of auditioning for the Comedy Store was as much pressure as the Tonight Show, practically, because if Mitzi Shore, the owner of the Comedy Store, didn't like you, you're going back home.
Right.
It's over, because it was the place to work. So the excitement was there. Comedy was the rock and roll of the 70s. But to the America, getting on the Tonight Show, you were established. But to my industry, you weren't established till Johnny sat you down and talked to you. So just doing stand-up on the Tonight Show established you. But when Johnny talked to you, then you had arrived, So that was our goal, And so after I did my first appearance on the Tonight Show, my whole life changed. I never, after that first appearance, I was, and let me describe that to you if I can. You get there, and I auditioned with a couple of a comedy team and a new kid named Billy Crystal. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I think
I've heard of him. Yeah, I think I've heard of him.
Yeah, but he doesn't know Neil and Eric, and I do. So he hasn't made it this. But the first time when I passed the audition and they gave me a date, I go to the Tonight. I'm all excited. You're telling them, and I'm in the unemployment line. I got a wife and 3 kids, and I can hardly get rent money. And now I go there, and they put me in makeup, and then they take you up to your dressing room. Then they bring you down later on to the green room because you're getting ready to go on. And then they take you behind this big dark curtain, and you're ready to go out in front of 26 million people. And not only that, every buyer from Vegas was watching that show. All the managers, the agents from our this is that moment. This is that thing that you hear about your whole life about seize the moment. In sports, I've heard athletes say the moment comes and you got to seize that moment. And this is that, that song that Whitney Houston did, that one moment in time where I'm just a heartbeat away, when all of my dreams are just a heartbeat away. and the answers are all up to me. You know, that's what it's like standing behind in front, and 26 million people watch that show. Well, they get me there, make green room, I mean, upstairs, make the dressing room, then green room, and they come and tell me, we ran out of time. You got to come back next week.
Oh,
So now
no.
I come back next week, they bump me. I come back next week, makeup, dressing room, green room, ready to go on. We ran out of time. They did that 3 weeks in a row to me. Right? And I haven't eaten in 3 weeks, right? So now, so now the fourth time I go there, I'm in the makeup room, and Fred DeCordova, the producer, came in. He said, I got bad news for you. I said, what? He said, you're going on tonight. How you get a lump in your throat about the size of a grapefruit, you know, and but now it's time to go. When it's time to do the show, they take that long walk with you. And after I became a veteran of the show, the stage hands and everybody would say, hey, Dreesen, how's your Cubs? Hey, Tommy, how's your, oh, hello. But that first time, when you're taking that long walk to go behind that curtain, the stage hands all turn their back on you and they whisper, it's his first time. It's his first time, you know. Now you get behind that curtain, and the coordinator said, oh, you're right, I'm fine. He leaves you alone, and now you're all alone with your thoughts, and they're in commercial break. Doc Severinson's playing, and you're in commercial break.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the music stops and your heart stops because the curtain starts lighting up and you're back live, and your heart stops. Oh boy, 20, you if I bomb here, all my dreams, everything is out the window. Not only that, my mother had everybody back in Harvey, Illinois watching the show, so I can't even go back
home.
Yeah,
everybody's watching.
So now you hear Johnny say, we're back now, and I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight, because my next guest is making his first appearance on the Tonight Show. Would you welcome, please, Tom Dreesen? Now, that I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight. He never does it on any other appearance. You know, I did 61 appearances after that, but that first time he gets that line, I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight. And they open that curtain and you walk out, and oh my God, the bright lights, you can't see the audience. You can only see the on camera, the red light. There's a mark on the floor. You have to hit that mark. And now it stops. And I got that first joke out, I got a laugh. Then I got the second joke and the third joke, and pretty soon I'm getting applause. Then I hear Johnny and Ed McMahon laughing behind me, and now I'm on a roll. I got 8 applause, and now I close with, I say, you've been a marvelous audience. Show business is a tough life. So this is my first appearance on the Tonight Show. If you like me, just if you like me, and you're Protestant, say a prayer. If you're Catholic, light a candle. If you're Jewish, somebody in your family owns a nightclub. Tell them about me, will you please? I go to the coordinator comes running up and he said, go back. Johnny called me back for a second bow. I went back through the curtain for another bow, and he gave you that little circle like this. Yeah. And I never stopped working from that day on. I started doing Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Johnny Carson, Midnight Special, Rock Concert, Soul Train, American Bandstand, Hollywood Squares, $20,000 Pyramid. I was doing all the shows, touring with Mac and Tony Orlando and Dawn and Frankie Avalon and James Darren and Gladys Knight and the Pips and Natalie Cole and Smokey Robinson. They're all calling me because they needed a comedian who could work clean, because they had family audiences. But eventually to Frank Sinatra, you know.
Wow.
Wow. I have the question. I could see I can picture, because I lived it once, but not to the level you did, Tom. I did WWE TV. I used to be a professional wrestler, but I went where those lights, and it was about 13,000 people. And I walk out a nobody doing TV taping. It wasn't a squash match. It was a match that I lost in a tag team. But I remember walking out, lights, and like my heart stops. I know exactly what happened, Tom. So did you think you were going to kill it that night? And then Eric will have the next question.
Well, you know, you never know, because you never know how that audience is going to be in your whole comedy career. You never know, how it's going to be. And so all you can do is hope. But when I got that first laugh, that really helped, and then the second laugh, and then I start getting in a rhythm. The hardest part was I was so used to my whole career looking and seeing your faces in the audience, but I couldn't see you. They were all dark, but you could hear them. And so that was, you never know how it's going to be, how the audience is going to be. So it's always a big surprise,
Right. Well, and as you mentioned, getting on with Carson is a game changer. It's a life changer because the whole world watched Carson every night. I mean, it kind of came to a standstill and you turned on Johnny Carson. So,
Well,
you
television was
know,
very small days. You know, it was ABC, NBC, CBS. Television was this big. Today,
yeah,
you got that channel selected. There's 800 stations you can go to. There
yeah,
was no cable television in those days. So everybody watched that, you know. That's why, and another question you'll probably ask online, but that's why I work clean, because people say when you work in our business, when you use the F word or you talk about sexual innuendos, they call that working blue. You know, did you
yeah,
work blue? I'm in show business. That's two words, show and business. And for me to be a success, I had to get on the Tonight Show. Well, how do you get on the Tonight Show? As a businessman, you watch the show and saw what the comedians were doing. They were writing material that could make grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the kids laugh. You
yeah,
couldn't work off color. So that was crucial in those days. And Carson, he launched careers. I mean, you know, a pathway to stardom as a stand-up comedian. And in the 70s, comedy was the rock and roll of the 70s. People were
yeah.
getting every night at the Comedy Store. It was so exciting. You know, all that's in that book too, that I wrote. All that excitement at that era. You know.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I would love your inputs for people today and comedians today, because you don't see a lot of clean comedy, right? You turn on Sirius and all of that, and it's not real family friendly. You know, what would be your message to someone, or you know, that's wanting to be a comedian but trying to figure out how to keep it clean and be funny, and you know, what's your message to people today?
Well, there's only one rule in comedy: be funny.
Yeah,
That's the only rule. Be funny. Now, you know, I tell young comedians, aside from a stand-up comedian, that's what I am, first, last, and always. I'm a stand-up comedian in my heart, body, and soul. But I also give motivation talks. I've read literally hundreds of books on the powers of the mind, and it fascinated me. So I give motivation talks to corporate America, to colleges, to universities, but I give a specific one to comedians called The Joy of Stand-Up Comedy and How to Get There. You know, but I always tell the young comedians, challenge yourself. Start your first hour of comedy that you're going to write. And by the way, I don't think you can survive as a stand-up comedian over a long period of time unless you're also a good writer. Now, if you're wealthy, you can buy jokes, you know,
right.
but for the most part, when you start out, you got to be a good writer. So I say, challenge your writing skills. Try to write material that can make grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the kids laugh. You know, challenge your creativity. You know, with the F word, it's a noun, it's a pronoun, it's an adjective, it's an adverb. Anytime you're in trouble, you go there. Tell you a funny story. Recently at the Laugh Factory, two young comedians, I was upstairs going to try out some new material and see the two comedians around the corner, and they didn't know I was around the corner. And one of them, I was looking at my notes because I was on next, and one of the comedians said, Tom Dreesen is here tonight. And the other comedian said, oh yeah, he's old school. And the other comedian, the young kid, he said, what do you mean old school? He said, well, he doesn't use the F word. And the other kid said, he doesn't use the F word. What does he use for adjectives? And I stuck my head around the corner. And I said, adjectives. That's what I
use adjectives for adjectives.
Yeah, that's right. So my point of that is that it's lazy writing. I mean, and the other thing too in comedy, if you use an adjective too much, it loses its effect. So about the 15th time you say the F word, if you did it first to shock me, okay, I'm shocked. You know, that you said. I'm not shocked, but at my age, I'm shocked. You know, but young kids, they think pushing the envelope. You know, that's not a challenge to your creativity. Now, if afterward, you know, by the way, I would never tell you what kind of comedy to do. Afterward, if that didn't work for you, then you know, go any way you want to go. You know,
right.
It depends. See, I can make more money on one corporate date than you can make for the whole month at a comedy club.
Right.
One corporation, AT&T, IBM, American. Now, if you're a headliner, and you take people coming to your show, that you can do whatever material you want. They paid to see you. You know, you're
Right.
the headliner. You're the opening act, and the headliner's paying you. They can dictate policy. If you go to a corporation, they can dictate policy. The head of the corporation of IBM or something say, hey, fella, my audience are our clients and my employees, and I don't want you to offend anybody. I got some born-again Christians or very Orthodox Jews in my audience, or whatever they say. So if they're paying, they can dictate policy. So that's why I like to have a wealth of material. I could do a stag roast with the best of them. I'm a street guy. I don't have a degree from academia, but I got a doctorate from the streets. I grew up on the streets. I know every dirty joke there was or ever will be. I can tell them. You know, but I want to make a living in this business.
Yeah. So another question for you that goes right along the same lines is, a lot of people think, oh, I'm funny, I'll just walk on stage and tell jokes. So talk to us about preparation. How long do you prep before you actually take it live on a stage?
Well, when you've been doing it for years, you've got a wealth of material in your brain.
Right.
I still will draw it out. I'll write it out, and I'll say, if Frank Sinatra said to me, Tom, I want you to do 20 minutes tonight, and then next night he might say, I want you to do 30. Another night he'd do 45. We're in a big Coliseum, 20,000 seat arena or something like that. So I always prepare. I'll sketch, and then I'll write some new material about the town that we're in. I'll try to come up with some ideas about the local area and stuff like that, but about being prepared. But when the bell rings, when you walk out there, when the bell rings, I teach this to young comedians. It's a conversation, not presentation. I write that on the blackboard. Is it your act? You damn right it's your act, but it's your job to make it look like it's not an act. It's a conversation, not a presentation. So when you walk out,
like that.
Yeah, when you walk out there, it's as if I were to say to you, or Eric or Neil, or if your wife says to you, hey, we got 25 people in the living room, and I'm making dinner for all of them, but it's not going to be ready for 20 minutes. Right. Go out there and tell them some stories about Dallas and the snow, and Neil, talk about the Steelers. Those funny stories you tell about the Steelers or the Pirates.
Right.
Till I get dinner ready. So you walk out into your living room. Hey, dinner's going to be ready in 20 minutes. I got to tell you something. I went to a Steeler game last week, and it's a conversation. It's an act now. So when you walk out on stage every night, it's not their house, it's our house. What intimidates most young comedians is they're thinking they're in somebody else's territory. I'm walking out, and this is their house. This is every stage we walk on. This is our stage. If they could do what we do, they'd be up here. They can't, so they're out there.
Right.
So own it. Own that stage.
Exactly.
This is my house. And it's a conversation, like I say, not a presentation. It's a conversation. Now, by the way, you're nervous, you're frightened. Sure. Most entertainers aren't.
Yeah.
The audience know that. The audience has no idea.
They have no idea.
They have no idea. So again, walk out there and you take command, but also the other thing I tell them, have fun, and the audience has fun.
Exactly.
Have fun. When you're walking on stage, in that master of ceremonies, if you're just up there, but you walk out with a big smile on your face, you came and have fun. You smile at them, they smile back at you, and even when it's not going good, have fun.
Yeah.
Because the audience wants you to have fun.
Now,
I
Tom,
can tell you.
Right.
So, Tom, when you talk about having to be the opener always for Frank Sinatra, what did Frank tell you if some nights you weren't on? You didn't have that really going to get the audience going for when Frank would come on after you? Did he ever have those conversations where you just didn't, it was not, the crowd was not into it, or didn't hit? We always call the opening match in a wrestling show, that really sets the stage for the whole night. You're the one that's setting that stage for Frank Sinatra. Did Frank ever give you that feedback and stuff like that, certain nights that just didn't hit it?
No, I got to tell you, but I have to tell you that, and I'm not making this up. I mean, I never had a bad night with Frank Sinatra because his audiences came to play. They came, they were seeing their hero, and they figured if I was on that, if Frank, he hired the best arrangers, the best musicians, the best of all he hired. They would assume he wasn't going to hire a bad comedian. I mean, and also by the time I was through with Frank, I'd already done 35 or 40 Tonight shows. So I did have some recognition. I was doing all the other shows too, so I did have some recognition. But here's the key. Now I toured with Sammy Davis, Smokey Robinson. They do 1,200 people, 1,500 people, 2,000. When I opened for Frank, 20,000 people. In Hawaii, 40,000. And these big coliseums. So if I were to say to you, I'll say to you, Eric or Neil, here's your assignment. We're at the Nassau Coliseum, say in New York. There's 20,000 people out there. The show's about to start. 20,000 people in the audience, and it's in the round. You're not working proscenium where everybody's in front of you. You're in the middle, and they're behind you. They're to the left, to the right. They're all around you. Okay. I say, okay, Neil, Eric, here's the thing. There's 20,000 people out there. It's 5 minutes before the show now. I want you to go out there, and I want you for the next 45 minutes. I want you to walk out and stand in the center of that arena. And for the next 45 minutes, I want you to hold their attention, 20,000 people. Oh, one more thing. I want you to hold their attention for 45 minutes, but I want you to make them laugh for 45 minutes. Oh, one more thing. I want you to hold their attention and make them laugh. But I want you to make them laugh when you want them to laugh. I want you to pull the strings and the emotions of 20,000 people. No props, no tricks, no charts, no special arrangement, no orchestra, nothing, but you and 20,000 people. And one more thing, not one of them, you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
No
good.
pressure.
But I think as you said, it helped you because of the success you had as a comedian before
Yeah.
touring with Frank, right? You had that confidence, you believed you can do it, knew you could achieve it.
Yeah, although there is a trick that I used to do. There's a couple things I used to do that I teach young comedians. When you're working in that big, when I worked with Frank in Hawaii, we had 40,000 people outdoors, 40,000 people for a comedian. And when you're working in front of that big an audience, 4,000 or 5,000 are trying to find their seats while you're out there. So you got to get them do right now. You can't walk out there and try to do your A material from Jump Street. You know, you gotta get them focused on you in the center. So first thing I would do, I would work out when, you know, the lights would go down low, you know, and the people would go, oh, and then the orchestra would say, ba, ba, da, da, ba. And people go, oh, they thought Frank is coming out. You know, they're going, oh, ladies and gentlemen, the comedy star of our show, Tom Dreesen, you're, oh, you know, now on stage. And the first thing I would do, I'd say, I learned that it's a trick that I picked up a long time ago. I'd say, how many of you out there, I want you to applaud now. How many of you out there applaud, thought Frank Sinatra was coming out, applaud. And they'd applaud. Just how you feel, I'm a little bit disappointed myself. You know, now the first joke is on me. That's an old trick in show business. The first joke or two when you're a public speaker, make it on you. Tell them some dumb thing you did on the way there, or something that happened that morning, something that happened that, and I'll give you an idea of that later on. Remind me that about a golf tournament, that you can use something that happened that day to opener. But
that's even good if you're speaking, because Eric's a speaker. Myself, I'm speaking a lot on a virtual stage, a lot on Clubhouse. I'll have to think about doing that, especially when
absolutely
different things. These are great tips for people that are listening and watching this interview, because wow, Eric's taking notes, because this is what Eric does for part of his business is speaking. So I am the virtual stage, and I do so many shows. I've done 7,000 interviews, Tom, in my career of different people. And so I learned that, but I've only spoke in front of audiences, but I'm a former teacher as well. But Eric's like, wow, you're what we would call in Clubhouse, you're dropping gems. But go ahead, Eric, with the next question.
Nuggets.
You're told gems. Yeah, Tom, if you've got other nuggets and gems, keep going, because this is great.
Here's the other trick that I do. After I did that, the first is always on you, the first joke or two. Okay, then I would say to the audience, because I got to get them focused on me now, and they're all around me. I'd say,
right
out there, I want you to applaud. How many of you out there are in this arena your very first time? Applaud. You notice I didn't say raise your hand. See, I said applaud. Right. I talk, you react. I'm trying to bring them to center. I'd say, how many of you out there are in this arena your very first time? Applaud, and they'd applaud. I'd say, how many of you out there are seeing Frank live your very first time? Applaud, and they would applaud. Then I'd throw away, how many of you out there in the underwear? Applaud, whatever, you know, some joke, applaud. I talk, you react. I'm bringing them, you know. So, you know, and what I would do is, God bless you. I'm teaching the audience to you know, that bring it here. And then my first two jokes would be about the local area. If you got a joke about something that happened, you know, the mayor today, Mayor Turngreen here in Dallas or whatever it is, you know, some joke about the local area, one or two, then I would go into my A material. I'd never go into my A material from Jump Street. You got to first focus them on you, get them focused on the stage. And there's, you know, a couple of those tricks. Now, I'll tell you something else. If you're ever working a big noisy crowd, you're an MC and they're wrapping up dinner and you're trying to get everybody's attention because you've got to run the evening's program. Here's something, I've done this outdoors in front of 15,000 people at Millennium Park in Chicago. Everybody's standing. When people are standing, they're going to chat. When they're seated, better chance when they're standing, So what I do, why would I do any A material that's going to be wasted? I'll say, ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? Folks, can I have your attention, please? I'd mentioned a couple times. All those who can hear the sound of my voice, please look at those around you who are talking and say with me, shh. Now, I didn't say shh or be quiet or shut up. That's rude. I said shh. Now, shh. Now, then that's got half the audience. Now, those who heard me, they're my deputies now. I'll say once again, all those who can hear the sound of my voice, please look at those around you who are talking and say with me, shh. Now the people out there who were with me, and they're going, shh, and boom, it brings it right down. And then you can go into your program. But again, to start trying to talk while everybody's talking, it's
right.
a waste of your time. Yeah.
It is. It is. Well, but they're huge tricks. Like I'm literally taking notes. Just from, as a public speaker, but also I got to go to college in full ride as a vocal performance, right? So I'll there will never be another Sinatra for voice, but you study these great titans that have gone before, and it's like, how did they do that in the inflection? It's the little things, right, Tom? It's the little things that make such a big difference. And as you're given this master class on how to work with a large audience or with a small audience or one-on-one in your home where your wife says, hey, it's not going to be ready for 20 minutes. Like, this is huge. And one thing we always tell people is as you started initially, right? Nobody knows if you made a mistake. I've intentionally gone out in front of crowds and intentionally, like, we were in Mexico a couple months back and they wanted me to sing Nessun Dorma by Pavarotti, right? And he said, but I want you to do one thing. He's like, I want you to intentionally make up all the words. And it's in Italian, right? So nobody knew. If you listen to it, unless you heard it before, you have no idea that I'm making up Italian words, because nobody knows you made a mistake. Just keep going and have that confidence that it's like, I'm doing it. This is my show. And that's where you talked about, it's your stage. And I love the stuff that you're sharing.
Well, the other thing too is having fun. Like I say, have fun. And the audience have fun. Enjoy it. They came to enjoy it. Have fun.
That's
and
right.
Have fun. Even if you make a mistake, have fun with making a mistake.
Yeah. And own it. And that brings it back to you, right? The first two jokes are on you. So you can just own that.
Look, the greatest gift a God can bestow upon a human being is a sense of humor. By the way, that's one of in my motivation talk, I talk on 4 subjects: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor. And I elaborate on those 4 points. But again, the greatest gift that God can bestow upon a human being is a sense of humor. Now, a sense of humor is not, by my humble definition, is not when you have the ability to laugh at others' shortcomings and misfortunes. Right. It's when you have the ability to laugh at your own, to laugh at yourself. Because none of us are perfect. We all are flawed.
Right.
And so when you can share with somebody, show me a marriage where the spouse, that your spouse makes you laugh. And I'll show you a happy home, and that marriage is going to last a long time. I was on Hollywood Squares one time. I was on a TV show, Hollywood Squares. And the question of 3,500 women polled, what's the number one characteristic they look for in a man? And the answer was a sense of humor. The number one characteristic they look for in a man was a sense of humor. Somebody who didn't take themselves too serious. Psychiatrists or psychologists would tell you, most of the patients, we take ourselves too serious. And when you've got that, when you can laugh at yourself, the audience laughs with you, and your friends and your family, they laugh with you. You can teach your children a sense of humor. Every time you do something dumb or stupid, come home and share it with them. Tell them, geez, I was trying to get out of the car today and I dropped the grocery bag and I bent over to pick it up and I fell and I hit my head on the sidewalk. Now the groceries are all, share that with them. They laugh, and then they can start telling you the dumb things they do. That's what a sense of humor is. And the audience, again, if you have a mistake on stage, share that with the audience. They'll love you for it.
Right, because you're being real, you're being authentic. Of just, this is life. This is the stuff that happens. Yeah, that's great. Now, I read that Sinatra once remarked to I think it was a New York Times reporter. He said, "If I'm a saloon singer, and I am, then Tommy's a saloon comedian." And he's like, in other words, we're just a bunch of neighborhood guys. So, tell me about those times, some of your favorite stories in relationship with Sinatra.
that was one of my favorite quotations. That's what, when I was alone with Frank, when I stayed in his home, and he never went to bed till the sun came up, whether we were on the road or off, whether we were on the road or off. Yeah, he was nocturnal, and he wanted you to hang with him, and we'd drive around the desert where he lived down in Rancho Mirage in the Palm Springs area. He had a big compound, huge compound, and on the compound it had swimming pools and all that stuff in his main house. But on the outer perimeters of the compound were bungalows. They were called New York, Strangers in the Night, Tender Trap My Way, named after his songs. And I would stay down there in the bungalows, in his house. Sometimes Gregory Peck and his wife Veronique, or Kirk Douglas and his wife Ann, Jack Lemmon and his wife Felicia, Clint Eastwood and whoever he was dating at the time, Angie Dickinson, Robert Wagner, Joe St. John, all these people I'd seen in the movies when I was a little boy. And I'm looking, it was almost so surreal. I used to pinch myself all the time.
Yeah.
And they all became friends. But Frank would come and get me out of the bungalow sometimes at 3:30 in the morning. He said, let's take a ride, Tommy. We'd ride around the desert. While we were alone in the car, later in his life especially, we got a little more melancholy. He wasn't the great Frank Sinatra. He was a kid from Hoboken, and I was a kid from Harvard, Illinois, from the south side of Chicago. And that's how we related to one another. But I'll tell you how I got to work with him was being glib at the right time. I was working with Smokey Robinson. We were touring the nation, and we were at Caesars in Lake Tahoe, and Frank Sinatra was appearing at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe. And I had worked Harrah's times with Sammy Davis, and I worked Harrah's with Mac Davis and different artists. So it's the way it worked out was wonderful. I'm with Smokey for 7 days at Caesars. Now I could have went over to see Frank any night, but for some reason I chose this one night. I said, I'm gonna go and watch Frank's show, because I had seen him perform before. I want to go. I called the maitre d' and I told him I'm coming over. He said, okay, Tommy, I'll hold a place for you. You'll be all set. So I came off stage, and I didn't even at Caesars. And I didn't even change out of my stage clothes, and I bolted out the back door and ran over to the Harrah's, and I was running through the showroom because I didn't want to miss Frank's opening. Frank Sinatra created more excitement walking to the microphone than most people do with their whole act. He just walked out on stage. The place would go crazy when he came out. Anyhow, so I'm running into the showroom, and the vice president of Harrah's Hotel saw me, and he was standing with a big heavyset guy with a cigar. And the guy's name was Holmes Hendrickson, the vice president. He said, Tommy, come here. And I reluctantly went over because I didn't want to miss Frank's opening. And he said, Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin. Well, I recognized the name, Frank Sinatra's lawyer. He said, Mickey, this is Tom Dreesen. And I think Tom would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra. And the lawyer got a pained expression on his face, like he heard that a million times. And he said, hey, kid, if I gave you a week with Frank, would you want more than 50,000? And I said to him, Mr. Rudin, put it this way. If you gave me a week with Frank, would you want more than 50,000? He said, oh, I like this kid. I like this kid. And a week later, they gave me 1 week with Frank in Atlantic City at the Golden Nugget. And the second night that I was with him, he and his wife, Barbara, took me out to dinner. And I can remember like it was yesterday, in the middle of the meal, he put his knife and his fork down, and he looked at me and he said, I like your material and I like your style. I'd like you to do a few other dates with me if you're interested. And I didn't say, let me check my calendar. I said, and that turned into almost 14 years, 45, 50 a year, a friendship that I'll treasure till the day I die. I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I spoke at his funeral, and I miss him every day of my life. And for you, Eric, as a singer, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, what people forget about Frank Sinatra the most was what a brilliant actor he was. He won the Academy Award in From Here to Eternity in the movie Man with the Golden Army. Should have won the Academy Award, and so many other movies. One night sitting with all
Guys
those
and
stars,
Dolls, so many.
One night sitting with all those stars I told you about earlier, we were in the back at Frank's compound, and the women had gone to bed, and these guys, they were talking about film and directing and acting, and I was just thrilled sitting there. And they were talking about, I noticed they were showing such great reverence to Frank, these learned actors. And I was just curious. I said, Frank, who'd you study with? Because, in Hollywood, everybody wants to tell you, I was with Stella Adler. Said, did you study acting? And Gregory Peck grabbed my arm and said, acting lessons would have ruined him. This was a diamond in the rough you didn't fool with. Now, so when you gave Frank Sinatra a song, to him it was a script. What did the writer feel like the writer took in hand? Frank would immerse himself in that lyric and become that lonely guy in the bar whose woman left him, and he's never going to find love. And you felt that. You felt that.
You did.
Every emotion and the joy of his songs. Come fly with me, let's fly away. Now, you know, with Frank, you know, that what people forget that this brilliant actor, what he would do every day when he was going to record a song, he would read that song out loud all day long like a poem. You will be my music. You will be my song. When all the songs are out of tune and all the rhymes ring so untrue, then you will be my music. He would do it as a poem all day long, and then he'd go sing it. You know, again, there'll never be another Frank Sinatra, I don't think. I mean, he was the first of his kind, and he was the last of his kind, you know.
Yeah.
So basically, in the book, you talked about a lot about Frank, but also Tim Reed. So getting that chance to break barriers again, like as a comedian, to be able to travel with one of the greatest singers of all time and greatest entertainer, definitely the greatest entertainer of all time. And then this next stage in your life with Tim Reed, that's got to be awesome. Kind of explain a little bit of what that happened there.
Yeah.
That came way before Frank, but in 1969,
that came before Frank. Oh, okay.
Way before Frank, yeah. That's how I got into show business. My first 6 years in show business, I was with the black-white team, America's first black and white comedy team, and history shows the last. In September of 1969, we went on stage for the very first time. There were no comedy clubs in America. We worked all black clubs in the North and the South, what they affectionately called the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs. The 20 Grand in Detroit, when Motown was in Detroit, all the Motown acts would go to the 20 Grand and break in their show there before they went on to Vegas. So the 20 Grand in Detroit, the High Chaparral in Chicago, the Burning Spear in Chicago, the Sugar Shack in Boston, the Club Harlem in Atlantic City, before there was gambling in Atlantic City, where you would, opening night, and most nightclubs around the country was Monday night, and you close on a Saturday. At the Club Harlem, opening night was Saturday night. First show opening night was 10 o'clock at night. Second show was 2 o'clock in the morning. Third show was 6 a.m. Sunday morning, called The Breakfast Show. And all the waiters and the waitresses, 1,300 people would come to that show at 6 o'clock in the morning. All the waiters and the waitresses, all the night people would come there. And all the pimps and their ladies would come from Boston, not from Boston, from Newark, from Philadelphia, from Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan. All the pimps would bring their ladies down there, and in their Rolls Royces and their Bentleys and their Cadillacs, and 1,300 people. And the show would open up. Mama Lou Parks and her dancers, a heavyset black woman, and all of these young kids would do the dancing of the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. You know, it would rock the show.
Really?
Then a male singing group, then a female singing group, then comedy, and then it would be Smokey or the Temptations or the OJs, the headliner.
Yeah.
You know, and I would be the only white guy there. And Tim would walk out, the MC would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we got a comedy team from Chicago, and this comedy team has never been to Atlantic City, so it's their first time. Will you welcome the team of Tim and Tom?" And Tim would go out there by himself. And he'd say, "We're really happy to be here. We just flew in from Chicago, and we've never been." And pretty soon people say, we, what the hell is he talking about? And stage left, I'd slowly start coming out, and the light would hit me. And you hear all these black folks go, "Uh-oh, what do we got here? Look out now." I would slowly work my way to center stage to Tim, but I'd be looking in the audience, and I'd get to Tim. He said, "Where you been, man?" I said, "I don't see any of my people out there." And Tim would look, he'd say, "No, I don't think any of your people out there." I said, "Well, we better be funny." He'd say, "What do you mean we, white man?" And then the place would just and we had I mean, there's stories about that in the book and all that stuff, but it was really an experience. And then we worked all white nightclubs, so we ended up doing the Playboy circuit, and we stayed together. I'll tell you some treasure till the day that I die, and Tim will too. Netflix right now is talking about maybe doing a 6 one-hour series of Tim and Tom. We of course wouldn't play ourselves, but a young guy playing me and a young guy playing Tim, of what it was like to tour the nation before there were any comedy clubs with as a black and white act. But everywhere we went, now you got to remember, in 1969 there were riots. America was in turmoil. The Vietnam War, students were protesting all over the place, and I had just gotten out of the service. Tim had just gotten out of college. There was protests all over. African Americans were rioting in every major city in America, including where I grew up at. My neighborhood, had one of the largest riots in the country. And amidst all this turmoil, Tim and I were out there trying to make people laugh. We did 11 prisons in 1 year. We did county jails. We did colleges, universities, anywhere there was racial tension, we went, and not preaching, just trying to make people laugh.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many times somebody would come up to me and say, I learned more about race relations watching you and Tim than I did in any class or any school book. Yeah. Because see, you can't legislate love. No government is ever going to legislate love. So, race relations are race relations. They're having a relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's about. And so they watched Tim and I having all this fun, poking fun at the stereotypes. So many times people would come up afterward and say, a black kid would come up and say, I got a white friend that I'd like to reach out to, but if I do, the brothers are going to wear me out. But after watching you and Tim today, I'm going to reach out for my white friend. Then a white kid would come up and say, I got a black friend that I want to make friends with, but if I do, the white guy's going to call me names. But after watching you and Tim, I'm going to do that. That happened to Tim and I more than you'll ever know. And to tell you the truth, of all the things that I've accomplished in my life and that happened to me, I treasure that more than anything, because I never wanted, I know this sounds like humble BS, but I never wanted to be a big star. That was never a dream of mine, or be a multimillionaire. I wanted to influence people. Yeah. I'd hoped that I could influence people to the good in my life. That's why I like to give motivation speeches and stuff. But that meant more to Tim and I than anything else. And it's interesting that we were America's first black and white comedy team, and we were the last. There's never been one since. That was 45 years ago.
Wow.
Wow.
But y'all still made such an impact, right? Because people know you, people know Tim, even today, right? I wasn't born then, but I sure as heck know almost all the names that you've mentioned that you worked with. And I definitely watched WKRP in Cincinnati and just howled as a kid and still share. I tell you, I haven't shared something about WKRP since Thanksgiving, because every year at Thanksgiving I always share that one of where they're dropping off the turkeys out of the helicopter. So it's amazing. Like that show's been off the air for decades, and it still comes up every year, and people laugh, and still people talk about it. And the same with the impact that you guys had as a comedy group. There's relationships, I'm confident, that have changed or that were established because you guys were brave enough to put together the first black and white comedy during such American turmoil of segregation and all that, to do it, and to do it in such a way that connects at the heart, and it's not just a logical discussion, right? You bring comedy, you bring laughter.
Well, so much can be learned through laughter. In fact, if we were to do our act today, they'd run us out of town on a rail. The politically correct police are trying to stifle comedy as much as they can. Right. I tell young comedians today, stand-up comedy is the last bastion of freedom of speech. I'm a patriot. I spent 4 years in the military, 4 years in the Navy. I served in a Marine Corps unit 9 months. And I tell comedians all the time, thousands of men and women died so we could have the First Amendment. We have the right to say whatever we want in this country. Now, you don't have to listen to us. You can walk away from us. You can turn us off. But you can't tell us that we can't say. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. I understand that. But when people start telling you what you can say, the next step is to tell you what you're supposed to think. And you can't let that happen. Then you're a communist country. And we're getting real close to that today. The politically correct police always telling people what they can say and what they can't say, and then bringing up something you might have said 25 years ago. We're all flawed, guys. We're all flawed, and we've all made mistakes. But you can't judge somebody on something they did 25 or 30 years ago. And first of all, you can't tell people what they can say today. The First Amendment, one day that's going to change unless we stand up and don't let people change it for us.
So. Yeah. Well, and that's where, I love the fact that you have this history of coming up from the streets and having the connection with Sinatra. But then with that, and I mean, just to say, hey, I've been on the Tonight Show, dozens of times, and the Late Show with David Letterman, count all these countless times, and to have that and the people you've been with, but then to combine that with, the Tim and Tom show of bringing in unity within, just the black and white culture. And then to add on to that, the fact of being a veteran, right? And thank you for serving, by the way. It is a big deal. It is a big deal. So I want to thank you. But when you bring all those to piece together, that's why I'm so excited for you to have shared your story with us today and to share the impact and the book that you've written now.
But that's why I wrote the book, because, if I close my eyes, and again, this sounds like humble BS, but it's not. If I close my eyes, guys, no matter where I was in this 51-year journey, this wonderful journey of that I've been able to do. I performed for 5 presidents. I performed at the White House. I mean, all the things I did with Frank. If I close my eyes, I see a little boy with a shoe shine box trudging through the snow, going tavern to tavern, trying to make money to feed his brothers and sisters. That's how that book was written, from that little boy's perspective. Because all those things that happened to me, were like, I was in rarefied air. I used to take my shoe shine box from Harvey, Illinois. I'd get on the IC, Illinois Central, and I'd sometimes go downtown to the Chicago Theater, because that's where the big shows were at, the Chicago Theater. And I got bigger tips on if I could out in front and catch the people before they went in or during intermission. I got bigger tips than I would where I grew up at, the Chicago Theater. And one day, I'm flying into Chicago in a private jet with Frank Sinatra, and my name is on the marquee of the Chicago Theater. Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
And I mean, so I'm saying all these wonderful things that happened to me. That's why I put it in the book, because there's it basically it's just saying that dreams come true. That prayers are answered and dreams come true. In September 1969, when Tim and I went on the stage for the first time, I wrote something that got a laugh. And that moment, I had been wandering aimlessly all up to that time. I don't know what I wanted to do. I was literally praying, saying, God, what is it? This can't be it. I'd be in a bar with my buddies at 2:00 in the morning saying, I don't belong in here, and I got a laugh with something I wrote. It was like an epiphany, like the dark clouds open up and the sun burst through. My whole being went, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be a stand-up comedian. Oh God. And the thought that you could make a living making people laugh overwhelmed me. I couldn't sleep all that night. It was a Friday night. I got up the next morning, Saturday morning, and I went down to the church where I had been an altar boy, where I sang when I was a little boy, where my mom sang in the choir. And it was a Saturday. There was no service, and there was no one in the church. And I prayed. I got down. I said, God, I now know what I want. I want to be a stand-up comedian. If you let me make my living stand-up comedian, I promise I'll do charities. I was making all these promises. I promised, Lord, I'll give back.
Absolutely.
If I could make my living making people laugh. That was 50 years ago, September 1969. In September 2019, I went back to that same church, and I gave a sermon on a Sunday afternoon on the power of prayer. And I told the audience, 50 years ago, I knelt right over there.
Wow.
And all my prayers have been answered. All my dreams have come true,
Wow. Eric,
wow.
legacy.
That's amazing.
What a great sign of faith, which we see all the time in living a legacy. But now the legacy question, Eric.
Yeah. So, Tom, that's an amazing story. It's absolutely amazing. And I appreciate you sharing how it just came full circle with your faith and going into that church and then getting to share with the people in the church of, hey, dreams can come true. And you've got to have that mustard seed of faith. So one thing that we talk about, that we always talk about at Living a Legacy on the podcast, because living a legacy is about, amazing people using their influence to impact the world around them, right? And you telling your story, because those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. So you've written a book to tell your story, and you've got an amazing story. So my question for you would be, as you've lived a legacy, what do you want to be known as your legacy? How do you want to be remembered?
I would like if my tombstone said he was a good father. I have 3 children and 4 grandchildren, and now 2 great grandchildren. But my father was alcoholic, and he was a nice guy, docile guy, but alcohol was his master. And so I never had a father like most kids had. Took me to ball game, took me fishing and that kind of stuff. So then I have 3 children, but I'm on the road, and I'm sometimes doing birthdays and sometimes doing graduations. But I tried to make that up so many times to my children. I just hope that, and they, I've got the greatest kids in the world, but I hope that they will say he was a good father, that he loved me. That means more to me than anything in the world. And I'll tell you quickly, my charity in Chicago is the Illinois Fatherhood Initiative. Reason being is that 3 out of 40 million children in America today have no father in the home. 3 out of America have no father in the home. 5 out of every Hispanic have no father in the home, and 7 out of every 10 African American families have no father in the home.
Yeah.
And the number one, 77% of all teenage crimes are created by fatherless teenagers.
Right.
How important is the father in the home? Tupac said, if I had a dad, he said, my mom did a wonderful job, but if only a man can teach a boy how to be a man. If I'd had a father, it would have been so much better. Barack Obama said the same thing, a father in the home, how important a father in the home is. So my point is, it isn't rocket science, this all happened way back in 1964, the war on poverty, well-intentioned but misinformed, and what happened is if you have 1 baby out of wedlock, we're going to give you $250. If you have 2 babies, we'll give you $500. If you have 3 babies from 3 different men, we'll give you $750. By the way, if one of those is with you, then you don't get any money at all. We just told them, all of American children, women, that if you have a baby out of wedlock, the government will take financial responsibility. See, in my day, my mother said, you get a girl pregnant, you'll stand by her. That was the mantra in every neighborhood. And where I grew up at, in the Irish neighborhood, Italian neighborhood, Polish neighborhood, African-American neighborhood, Jewish neighborhood, if a girl got pregnant, you married her. If you didn't, you took care of the child. Now, so that, again, is all the chaos, all the trouble on the south side of Chicago is not rocket science. In my day, if there was a young boy roaming the streets and snatching purses and being a thug, the men of that community went and grabbed him and took him home to his father. We were more afraid of our fathers than we were of the police.
That's right.
And so my point of all that is, how important is a father in the home? And we need to promote that more than anything. So that's what I went a long way to say to you, that I hope that of all the things that I've done in my life, making people laugh was very important for me, but being a good father is far more important than all of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm actually working on a book on that very topic. So I'd love to figure out how I can support you offline on your charity and just the group, because it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And it's the foundation of a lot of the issues in our country, of just the missing dad. So thank you.
It is the issue. It is the issue. And I know I'm taking too much time here. I'm so sorry, but it's the issue. America won't be destroyed from without, because we have the strongest military ever assembled on this planet. Mm-hmm. But they can destroy us from within, and starts with break down the family structure. Break it down as much as you can. That's what the enemies know. And then get us fighting amongst each other. If we can get us fighting amongst each other, especially through the races, and America is multiracial, so they know that we're vulnerable there. So get us fighting through the races, and they can conquer us. Make us. That's what Tim Reed and I were all about. When they saw us up there, having fun, the enemies didn't want to see that happen. So that's the key. Anyhow.
All right, fabulous. Where can we purchase the book? Where can we go?
Amazon.com. They'll send it to you in a couple of days, or you can go to a Barnes & Noble store. Still Standing: My Journey from Streets and Saloons to the Stage and Sinatra. It was great being with you guys.
Awesome. And
Tom, thank you so much. Yeah.
And last thing, Tom, appreciate everything. And we appreciate you coming on. And Eric, what a great guest, wasn't he? Fantastic.
Absolutely.
So many stories. We could have part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. And just, I can't wait to come to Pittsburgh so we can hang out, Tom. I can't wait. When COVID lifts, I hope you'll perform in Pittsburgh, but I appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having you.
All right. Okay, guys. That was Living a Legacy. Take care.